of reasons. Firstly, because you remember when I was doing the franchise program, I just got into the process of recording everything.
Yeah.
What do I do over and over? But it is a good way of the first intent was just to keep a record of what we spoke about, right?
Mm.
Because people often forget. And there's often things we can go back to potentially. Not that you do that much, but at least we've got a recording. And secondly, for me, it's almost, as I said, I then straight away put it into my unlisted on YouTube, and I've always got it as a tool to sort of say, well, what worked well, particularly once you get into setup and planning sessions and all that sort of stuff with certain clients, and what didn't work so well, and what would I do differently, and that sort of stuff too. So yeah, I've got into a bit of a habit of recording a lot of stuff, and generally it's for me and my side only, and the client
All
side.
good.
Yeah, but
All good.
yeah, it's just kind of good to do. Um, but yeah, no. And what I was going to say is, yeah, I'm not. I'll do exactly what I would normally do. But at the same time, I do see in. I want you to recognize in what I say is that I don't think that we're doing everything perfectly to have a relationship with you and the clients that I want to work with. Right. So I think there's an opportunity here for us to
Mm.
up our game around certain aspects, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't know if I said to you before, and I think I pretty much did, is that um, I've got way too many at the real shallow end of the swimming pool. You know,
Yeah.
I don't
The
have
small
enough
end of,
at
yeah.
the start to swim level. I've got a
Yeah.
lot of sort of yeah, that low end, and that's okay. And as I said, it sometimes gets us towards the deep end, but it's not our approach. And the reason I'm saying this is because I think who you're targeting, and if we were working together on clients, we'd need to be at that end. We'd need to be with you at the
Mm.
in the middle of the pool to the top end, to the deep end.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the best analogy I can come up with. So in
Yeah.
other
No,
words,
no, I'm
yeah,
with you.
yeah,
I'm with you from that perspective.
yeah, take that with a
And
pinch of salt.
no,
Yeah,
no, no. I take it and I value that because I
yeah,
think there's there's a there's a. I mean, I've got a pretty good understanding of how everything works
mm,
and how it should work.
mm,
Um, but again, a lot of my time and space has been from a social perspective and a content perspective, been in the paid space. Yeah.
mm, yep,
So a little bit of organic, but a lot of paid.
yeah,
And you spend a lot of your time, not all your time, but a lot of your time in the organic space. So
correct.
it's a melding of the minds for you and I, because if we can actually work out how we can actually do this, you get the best of both worlds, because I know the benefit of actually leveraging your organic for your paid, and your paid for your organic. It's just
Yeah,
trying to find the workout.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. But also the content is what we talked about as
Mm.
well, and just having a level of
And
content.
don't have any petrol in the tank if you don't have any content. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So, look, the first thing that we do, as you would have seen, is we just put in the name, right? So, just to
Yeah.
see what happens from a search
Mm.
perspective, and then the
It's a
first thing we're
popular
off,
name.
and we always want to see what sort of comes up. Now,
Yeah.
clearly, it possibly would have been different if I'd go into Kaptura Video, but it does put you into this supply chain thing. Seems to be something else
There's a
that
few
sort of,
technology
yeah, that
companies.
you
Yeah.
sort of compete. Um, I'm guessing, where did the brand come from? Where did the name come from? Like in the first instance.
Yeah. So friend, my business partner, a friend of mine, Kim. He's from Barcelona.
Yep.
And we kicked around a heap of names, and for me, I'm kind of like a trying to make things work, and kind of find a common ground. Because of his Spanish background, I said, let's just use the Spanish, or the Catalan, because he's from Catalonia,
Mm.
word for capture,
Yep.
because that's what we're doing. We're capturing stuff. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, and that would be captura with C. Yeah.
Yep.
And then we went, no, that'd be pretty boring, and we'll get a lot of Spanish references. Let's just put a K on it and
Yep.
be a little bit more interesting. And that's how it came about.
Yep.
Not for any other research background, names, other company names, anything like that at all. Because as much as we obviously want that to work it was always going to be a small business that was going to network and business develop and leverage relationships to get business. We weren't going to get the phone ringing every day of the week from search and social. So
So
yeah,
if you were to see how the one above, when you come into that supply chain, if there was
mm.
to be, say the one that's second from the top, and it's got about,
Yep,
and it's got capture and powering intelligent supply chains.
yep,
Yours talks about, so maybe it's compelling video content, or it's compelling video production or something along those lines. And I
mm.
wonder, in terms of, so in its fullness, what would the next couple of words be for you, do you reckon? If
Yeah,
so that then you're not competing against anybody, right? So straight away, I mean, the obvious thing is capture a video,
yeah,
or maybe it's just capture a video production, you know,
yeah,
so that it means that as soon as you put that in, you
mm.
basically own that, right? So, um, and more often than not, the problem that I've seen with a lot of businesses is they might be called Lucas and Sons, and I'm like,
Yeah,
"Well, what the hell is that? A lawyer, legal firm, an
yeah. Who knows
accountancy,
what you do? Yeah,
whatever, right?" So clearly, those sort of businesses need a something. And I think in a way,
yeah,
capture maybe just, in terms of, and you're going to get that over time, and you probably already do it, right? With
mm.
whenever you sort of you're writing things, and clearly even from a Google, it's probably a bit small for you to see, but that capture helps brands grow their sales through affordable, compelling video content, right? So we get it seen, and that's probably on everything, so that helps
Mm.
ultimately. But it's almost like, what do we put in there so we don't have to see all these other mobs? Um, that said, the fact that you do actually come, and as I said, simply for Captura, the fact that your Google My Business comes up is actually quite surprising, right?
Yeah.
Because
Well,
yeah,
it hasn't come up for me before, so I'm glad it came up for you.
it's very surprising, right? So I did not expect. Well, I shouldn't say I wouldn't have expected, given I would have expected the other mobs be more likely to come up, but clearly
Yeah,
they may not be local, right? So that's probably the
yeah. And
difference.
I
Yeah,
don't think they're local, and I don't think they have a Google My
yeah.
Business page. Yeah,
Yeah, so we know that less than 50% have this, right? Even if they've got offline businesses, and the only time sometimes they have them because the um, Google van went past and took a photo, and they created it for them, right? And so it's always interesting because then it does have, do I own this business? Well, no, but I know the person that does. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
that straight away says to me, there's opportunities here, right? In terms of, I mean, you're a new business, so there's always going to be opportunity, right? But the
mm.
opportunity here is, adding photos, sending this map out, so
Yeah.
getting reviews, all that sort of stuff. Um,
So that's one thing that I really struggle with. So I used to have to manage some Google My Business, or my team did,
hmm,
for the franchisees at Clark Rubber and
yeah,
Autobarn. And I went in and set it all up, and I followed all the guides and everything I kind of knew about it. And then uploading images and videos, I don't know, there's no way of I couldn't find a way of going, that's my primary image, or that's my secondary image, or
oh
that's
yeah,
my
no, it's
primary
easy,
video.
no,
Yeah,
easy. We can do
but
that together. Yeah.
I went and did all that, and then it didn't work. I was like, fuck off, Google.
Hmm.
So then I kind of gone, fuck it, it's a low, it's low value. I'll get to that later, and I haven't
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
gone back to it.
Well, what you've done
Um,
is no, what you've done, as I said, there's nothing. Well, that's the phone number, right? And
yeah, yeah,
when I click on that, it takes me to the website. So
yeah,
in itself, it's and even the fact that I'm pretty sure that's the brand photo you want to have up there, right? I'm going to
yeah.
talk about it in a second, but that's the cover that you're using on a number of things. Your map is there because, did you mention to me you don't want home addresses? Well, you don't need to worry about home
No, so
addresses.
so
Yeah,
so I've kind of, because I work out of home,
mm,
and my other business partner works out of his home.
yeah, yeah,
Our registered business address is our accountant's, which is basically in
yeah, yeah.
Hawthorne. So that I don't really. I mean, a map means fucking nothing. I mean, I know Google wants it, but
Mm.
it's kind of one of those things. It's kind of irrelevant, but I don't know how to
Yeah,
work with
nowadays
that,
it
if you know
doesn't
what I
matter
mean.
though. You don't
Yeah,
have to. Google give you that option, of whether you
yeah.
disclose your address or not. So that's not a
Oh,
big
okay.
deal at all.
Yep.
Yeah. So in fact, and that looks like what you've done, right? So it doesn't. I don't know that it's your accountant's address if you've used your accountant's address, right?
No, no, I haven't.
Which
I
is
literally didn't put an
yeah.
address
So you
in.
don't have to worry about that
Yep.
at all. Yeah. No. So that's all good.
Yeah.
I can see you've actually even done an update here, right? Which was pretty
Yeah,
good.
I
There you
uploaded a
go.
whole heap of images, but I don't. That's not the one that I wanted to be the first one.
It may well
I
be.
didn't know
Has
how
it
to
been?
prioritize them.
Well, it's clearly verified because I can see it, right? So anyway,
Yeah.
the reality is what we'd expect um,
Mm.
as you go forward, particularly depending on what you put in there. So the first thing we're often talking to people is a Captura straight away. You're not like a mortgage broker or a buyer's agent or whatever, and
Mm.
there's a whole shitload of other digital agencies trying to advertise over above you, for instance, video
Yeah.
agencies. That's the first thing. There's nobody trying to claim your space, right? So you know the name is solid. The only
It's
the
a bit
only
unique.
issue
Yep.
that there is that there's someone else using that name or someone else's
Mm.
that's kind of in a different space. You just want to make sure that when they're looking at it, they know which one's you, right? So what
Yep.
that would probably mean is probably extending things so you know that the video production starts to become more prominent, right? And then what you'll finish up having is all your socials start to come into play as well, right?
Mm.
I think your LinkedIn did come on there. Um, so
Yeah. Not on page one though. Yeah.
yeah, no, that's right. But that'll happen. It's early
Mm.
doors, right? So um,
And I haven't done any paid search either. So
yeah,
I almost did, and then it went down a rabbit hole. I went, no, I'm not doing that yet.
yeah, and I would, you would have heard sort of, this is your $1,000,000, right? So I just generally take a screenshot of what I'm seeing, right?
Yep.
And this is your $1,000,000. You know, we're lazy, so we don't want to do too much. Most of your real guts of it needs to be where you want it to be, right? Um,
Mm.
I again, this is grow your, so your call to action's clear, right? As
Mm.
in, and your positioning is very clear because it's what greets me as I come. You know, help you grow your sales through
Yeah.
video content. Awesome, right? The thing might be is that you start to it's is that even underneath fit capture it could say, you don't need to just do it, but you might just need something that says video production or something along those
Yeah.
lines potentially,
Yeah.
um
Video content. Yeah.
yeah. And again, when you get taught something, you then share it to others. So again, take it. This
No.
isn't. This
Yeah.
isn't. This isn't. This isn't gospel, but it's gospel as to how I tell people.
Yeah.
Does that make
No. No.
sense? We've been
No.
taught
It's
to
it's.
read. We've been taught to read websites top left,
Yeah.
down, up. Right.
Yeah.
So again, you got to. This is a really powerful image for me. If that's your image, I almost would because this is a video, right? That's a video running through, which makes
Yeah.
sense
Yeah.
because of what you do, right?
It's a looping
Um,
video. Yep.
but potentially, you try and create a really good, powerful photo image of that video that might be your cover on everything else, right? So that immediately you know the same thing that kind of greets me here is what
Yep.
greets me on all this other socials. So you got that absolute consistency. And I'm going
Yep.
to talk about something else in a second, but it's not as relevant here. But just the first thing is your 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 billboard and your social
Hmm.
media covers. I believe have greater. There's that consistency, but it's much more powerful when they all represent and look the same.
Yep.
So there's no question. Oh, this isn't the capture technology company. This is the same mob. This is
Yeah.
definitely that capture business. Anyway, so to top right, we talk about social media proofing, but that could easily just be about uh, how do you want to be contacted? Y- you know, um,
Mm.
and so you might have let's face it, somebody like Jim's, that could be a 1-300 number, that could be having your email
Oh yeah.
as the click
Yeah.
up the top, and a lot of the formats. Is there what sort of platform is it on? Is it a WordPress or is
WordPress.
yeah?
Yeah. WordPress.
So they
Yep.
often have it that it's a banner up the top. So however you want to be communicated with, and particularly with anybody that's my age and maybe my age, your age, and 10 years younger than us or older than us,
Mm.
um, they're lazy and make it easy. Tell me, I
Yep.
don't, I can't be asked. I just want to talk to you and meet with you. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Particularly the old school,
Yep.
you'd get that, right? And in my world, even more so, they're much more about just want to pick up the phone. Yeah.
Yep.
So maybe that's something to consider. But then from a social context, you've got Facebook, you've got Instagram, you've got LinkedIn, and arguably they're the three most powerful. But you're a video business, so your YouTube channel. Um,
Yeah. The only issue with YouTube is that I've got no YouTube. I've got nothing I really want people to see on there at the moment because we've got no videos that we can kind of show of the work we've done
You've got
publicly.
your the
Privately,
one
we
you
can.
shared with me. You don't want to
Yeah,
share it, even if
but
it was snippets.
no,
No, can't share that.
no, it's because it's private, because it's
Yeah,
actually we weren't commissioned to do that work, and it's not our intellectual property.
yeah. So
So
on that
yeah.
basis, though, it's still something um, that again, what I explain to others, because you can
Mm,
imagine for sole traders and small businesses, YouTube is by
mm.
far and away the last channel they go with, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But,
yeah,
but what I tell them, and I think yours is could be the case, is actually other than your website, is actually the best landing page because you can actually
yeah,
put all your links into your YouTube channel. Whereas you
yeah,
can't do that on any of the other channels, right? You can't put that
mm,
on. You can put it, you can, but you can't. They're not visible, right? So
yeah.
you can't put it in. So that's why I think your YouTube should be on there because you're gonna be putting YouTube on there, and you can always explain to people because you would actually have your unlisted, and you probably already do. You'd have your unlisted.
We have a lot of unlisted stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's right.
yeah,
So that's YouTube. Your Google, you've already got a Google Place. So again, you'd have that link so that people that are working with you, people that want to find you, again, they click on that. It just takes them to the map view of your business, right? It just makes you a bigger business. So your Google icon can sit on there.
the Google My Business.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Google. So essentially, as I said, what we do in our business. So again, I'm just telling you what we do
Oh,
for
okay.
us,
Yeah,
right? Is
yeah.
we put it up there. So if I click on that, it's a very easy way for me to tell people, "Oh, thanks, you've had a good
Well,
experience.
that's where
Here's
we
the
are.
link."
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can go and tell other people, sort of thing, right?
yeah,
Um, yeah. So yeah, if as I said, we eat our own dog food here, um,
yeah.
and then the only other one is Twitter. And again, it's not because it's. I had the conversation with the people before you. People often say, "Oh, Twitter, what's it
Mm,
with?" Twitter has the best organic impressions. That's what I would say to people, and you may as well own your own
yeah,
name. You may as well own the brand, right? And and
yep.
and to be honest, if I'm going to pick a sixth most powerful social media channel, I still believe it's Twitter, right? So before Pinterest and Snapchat and
Yep.
whatever else might come into play, right? So it's just my belief. Otherwise, the
How do
other
you
thing,
how do you
yeah,
create a business one?
I know
Is it
you.
easy to create a business
Yeah,
Twitter?
yeah, it's
Yeah.
no different. You basically just
Okay.
create it. So yeah, so
Yep.
you basically so what sometimes people do is if they're a solo business, they might have the John Smith and then whatever John Smith does. Um,
Yep.
but um, what was I going to say? Yeah, no. Realistically, you just flick between the two. It's
Mm,
basically Twitter and Instagram are the only two platforms that basically when we're managing for people, you have a shared sign in. So I just know how to
yeah.
sign into my, with the password, and I know how to
Yep.
sign into the Instagram with a password. Everything
Mm,
else, you're either an admin or a manager. Um,
mm,
and, LinkedIn company, Google My Business, YouTube, Facebook, all the same, right? And even now, really, with
yeah.
because Facebook owns Instagram, even under the Google My Business, to a degree, I only ever have to sign into it once. I don't have to ever sign into it again, sort of thing, right? Because I can
Yeah.
access it through the Google My Business. Um, just with you, you personally, again. By the way, I only ever pay for the LinkedIn if it's offered to me, as in I take the free and then I turn it off each time.
Yep.
Only because, other than the little gold icon, I don't think it's necessary. Most people that I meet don't use it the way that it could be used anyway, right? So it's you're kind of
Yeah.
paying here for maybe the BMW, and most people don't even use the push bike. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but having said that, the main thing that strikes me when I'm doing this sort of stuff is selling is repelling on any network, right?
Yep.
So um, I typically don't put any branded stuff on the back of my on the anything that I
On
do,
your
right?
personal
So
one.
so
Yep.
again, I would that's not to say that you couldn't be there with the team on a shoot, from something awesome, and
Mm-hmm.
then and that it tells me what you do and what space you're playing in, right? So it could be a
Mm-hmm.
screenshot of something that's relevant, yeah. And often for
Yep.
people's personal brands, I suggest to them to make it a secondary image, not the primary image for their company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's the first. I use an image, and again, I'm just telling you what I believe and what
Mm.
I and they're useful beliefs, and
Yep.
and from what I believe for myself is that I use an image of Melbourne's west looking out back to Western Australia where I'm from because I know there's a shitload
Yeah.
of business and a shitload of people that I kind of know. You know what I mean? So it's personal
Yeah.
to me, and that's why, and I can explain it to somebody if they're interested, right? Similarly,
Yep.
you know, whatever that image looks like, you can then say to people, I use that image because it resonates with me because of what I do and who I help and blah, 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 you know?
Mm.
Um, this stuff here, again, this is awesome, right? But I would be sort of saying in here now is that you would say you are the chief marketing officer,
Mm-hmm.
and you would then say, I think you can even squeeze. You're the rare few where you actually have made pretty good use of the amount of characters you can use on your LinkedIn.
Yep.
But if you were going, so video content, that'll help you. Um, engage with call to action. I don't mind. Probably there's an element of I would almost sort of say, okay, how do you tell people what you are and you know the business that you actually work with that does this?
Mm.
Because really, when you're the CMO of Kaptura, I don't know how big that business is. That sounds like a big business to
No.
me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? So that's what I would suggest for you at the moment is that if I was sort of, we were looking at how you make your online business card, if you like,
Mm.
as impressive and as serving you in the best possible way, it would be to make sure people think, oh, fuck, that's all right. So I could see Damien. I used to know Damien when he did this, but now he's the sort of he's the chief marketing officer over here, right? So,
Mm.
um, but again, thinking it of it from a it always surprises me, this stuff is where LinkedIn then goes. I'm sure your post helped this as well, but it's if you go and search people in your network who are video production, you want to make
Yep.
sure you come up, right? You want to make sure.
Yeah.
So in fact, I do that a bit, right? Video production, there's a lot of people in that space, right? And it's not often not always the people that are in there you'd expect to be in there, right?
No.
So one of the thing you might want to do is have a look at do a search video production and have a look who comes up in your, and often it'll be people that are second connections, right? They're not people you're
Yes.
connected with. Have a look what
Yep.
they've got in their tag bylines to work out what you perhaps should be putting into yours.
Mm.
Yeah, because
Yep.
that's the space you want to be playing in. Um, that said, I think you've already set the company up, and we don't. In fact, again, the people I was just talking to, who then asked me around posting for them, and I said, no, I don't do that. Right? I don't like. Mainly, I don't like the security around the fact of me going in and being
Mm.
somebody else. And I'm very surprised that as a company that they are, who is a much more mature hiring company, that they would ask that of me. But they got their
Yeah.
reasons because someone I think's been doing that sort of thing for them. Um, but I
Yeah.
just don't like it.
It's easier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
I
easier.
just don't
Easier
like
for
it. I
them to
said, look,
do it. No.
I'll be posting as the business. You can always pick up that, and then you'd add yours, and people will engage with it.
Mm. Yeah.
But that's what I would be suggesting, right? So again, similarly here, love the fact people often get confused. There's no need to have this here and this here. I can already see
Yeah.
who you are. Yeah. And
Yeah.
again, any imagery on any social media, particularly in the news feed, the graphic we can do without it. But that's the space where I think you and I can help one another.
Yeah.
I think there's a place for it, but I think it's very, very gentle.
Yeah.
Do you remember that Facebook wouldn't let you advertise in the past if you had any more than 20% text? Did you know that in the
20%. Yeah.
past?
Yeah. Yeah. No. No.
Yeah, they had
I've
their
got
little
ways of working around
thing,
that.
and you had to
Yeah.
work within it. That's no longer the case, right? But that doesn't mean you should do more than it, right? Uh,
No. And the trick that I used to use with that, or and still do,
mm,
is I'd always animate what I wanted to communicate. So the first screen
yeah,
grab or the first thumbnail it grab had just an image. It didn't have any text on it. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Particularly when you're doing video, yeah.
Mm.
Um, just a psychological thing though, just so you know.
Mm.
Um, so I told my first business partner was a graphic designer, right? The,
Mm.
what we realized though, to do graphic design and the social media marketing, we pretty much were going to have to charge them double.
Mm-hmm.
But particularly for the clients that I worked with, and I was 90% of the business. So effectively, they were very price sensitive. So doubling your price on what we were offering was a hard
Hard.
push, right? That
Yeah.
was the first thing. But the more importantly, psychologically, if you put branded images into a news feed from your local dude who we kind of
Mm.
like anyway, as soon as you start to brand them, you start to sell.
Yeah.
And people, doesn't matter who you are, as soon as you start to sell in my newsfeed, the fuck are you doing selling in my newsfeed? I just want to see Mary's post and John's this, and because we're
Mm.
disruptive advertising. Ultimately,
Yeah.
even when we're um, organically posting, we're still disruptive
Yeah.
to a degree,
Yeah.
right? So we need to be in such a way that we're always relational first, and people, if they can see themselves in the imagery or the video or whatever it is, it's a lot better than what we do on the
Yeah.
on the branding. But as I said, I am I'm moving a little bit away from the fact that I still believe that you can't do all this. But I
Mm.
think I think that you mentioned before, you've used people and you do things around, the tiles and different things along that. I think there is a place for that, particularly on
Yeah.
Instagram, by the way, because
Yeah.
Instagram, they don't read the posts. But anyway, I think I'm laboring. Geez, and look
No,
at our
yeah.
time.
All good. All
You
good.
and I are good talkers. I don't actually have a 4 o'clock, so don't worry. I don't know if you do.
No,
Um,
I don't.
so, um, yeah, so the good thing that I think that you have done is you've actually straight away, and I'd expect this of you, you've got your brand consistency. Um, I would just sort of more softly around this one that does actually show you what to do. So I'm not going to relabor that again. Um,
Mm.
if I go to just to understand the strategy, right? So let me just have a quick look. Um, I'm going to look at your post, right? So actually, well, no, I don't even need to. I'm going to pick on one post, right? And this is your pin post, right? So this
Long post.
hashtags,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
great on, well, I don't even know if it's great on Instagram now, to be honest. I understand that 4 hashtags max even on Instagram nowadays,
Yeah. Okay.
right?
I thought that was the case. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're using, but particularly again, as soon as you start doing, and a lot of people are doing this now ever since Instagram got moved in, they're using Instagram because it's a relatively easy hack, right? You do your Instagram and shoot it across to your Facebook. Just about
Yeah.
everybody seems to do it that way, which is funny because.
Rather than doing a separate post.
But don't you
Yeah.
remember? You think about it personally, right? Do you remember with your personal friends and stuff when all of a sudden people started to put hashtags there?
Yeah.
Do you remember? Because you and I aren't that different. I've got a theory, right? If you went single or 28 in 2008, then social media wasn't your time, right? You missed it,
No.
right?
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden we're seeing these hashtags. It's like, what the fuck is all that about? You know? And I've got mates now that are thinking, what the fuck are you posting on Instagram? And I'm seeing exactly the same post on Facebook. My mates don't get that, particularly back in WA. They're like, what the I'm
Yeah.
sure I've had people unfriend me because of it.
Yeah.
Why do I need to see the same thing on both of those? Well, because half of you never got across to that one, and you've only been on
Yeah.
Facebook for 3 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's kind of the point, is that the
Yeah.
hashtags don't resonate with mainly with people when they're reading it, right?
Yeah.
So you think about the 45-year-old corporate or the 50-year-old corporate decision maker generally, which is a Damien,
Mm.
that doesn't have the marketing kind of sense, that doesn't get what you'd have to explain to them, right? Is that I'm
Why I'm
using
doing it.
3 because we know that 3 is not going to knock your organic algorithm.
Mm.
Um, we don't know again around. I can't tell you around paid. Paid, it probably makes no difference because you spend $1. Well, it's just you're spending $1. They'll do
Yeah.
what you want it to do, right? But anyway, more's that post. The other thing is, often I just tell you what I guess I know from my clients is when
Mm.
they often come to me, we're doing the audit, they often make the mistake of nice, right? So and you haven't made that mistake, right? So firstly, this is actually, I'm happy. This the way you've set it out. It's actually pretty good, right? It's not too
Mm.
clunky. It's a pin post. It's important to you. Um,
Probably too much copy.
You've y Yeah, there's a lot of copy. The other thing we remind people is sometimes you can only see the first, particularly in the feed,
Yeah.
you might only be able to read the first 2 lines of the copy, 2 and a
Yeah.
half maybe, depending on what
Yeah.
platform. And so if you're wanting them to do something or go somewhere and it's not paid, then you probably wanna make sure that that's fairly high.
Yeah.
Um, but again, you're doing it. The amount of people that don't do anything along those lines with links or call us or do anything, so pretty much I've made the mistake in the past saying we don't do copywriting. That's not actually true, because what we do is the social media copywriting, because we need to position it at least with a call to action, whatever it looks like at the end or at some part in the post, to tell them to do something else.
Yep.
You know, and so and then the hashtags that we generally go with, consistency. So that'll be the same on all of your posts. And then what we think, so it's early doors, right? But I'm sure already with, let's say you're building towards 100. Well,
Mm.
on your best posts, most likely, it's
Yep.
good if Damon and Steve have given it a like. Those ones, maybe you'll get 15 to 20 people maybe also seeing it. Yeah.
Yep.
But maybe at times you only get 2 people or
Yeah.
3 people, and that's just the Facebook algorithm, right? Whereas,
Yeah.
and as you said, you understand the paid. As soon as I put a buck on it, in fact, $5 a day, I know for most of it in COVID, we've got double the bang for our buck.
Yeah.
As soon as people go into lockdown, Facebook gives you more, right?
Yeah.
So the
Well, that
dollar
that
value's
one
gone more.
that
Yeah,
one you've got there, I did that organically, and then I gave it a put $50 behind it for like 4 or 5 days,
yeah,
and I've got the furthest reach I've got on anything for a long time. I've got,
yeah,
basically got, it's still going, and I think I've reached 3,500 people.
yeah. And what sort of campaign did you do? Do you remember? Do you know?
Basically call a phone number, so call now.
Call to action. Yeah, yeah.
So it tells me that like 30 odd people have clicked the link, but I haven't got any fucking phone calls, so I don't believe it.
Yeah, and so I must admit, we don't ever use phone number because most
Yep.
of the time it's not advanced enough. In fact, even with Jim's group, right, we're not using phone number, but we've
Yep.
always got the phone. If phone number's important for you, put it at the top, put it on your website
Hmm.
too, right? And basically, it's a lot easier to measure, as you said, because if you've got a link to learn more and it takes people to your actual website, well, then you'd actually know that they've gone to the website because the pixel can tell you as well, right? So,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
then and a lot of it again from our clients, the target audience is. I was just speaking to the people then because they're APAC, right? Well, if you're
Yep.
APAC, it's a bit like, where do you target? And I was just sort of saying, well, I depends how you want to break it up, but you eat an elephant slowly, right? So in other
Yes.
words, don't try not to have your target communities any bigger. So if it's Melbourne that you're targeting to start with, make your haystack no more than 250,000, right?
Yeah.
As soon as
Yeah.
your haystack's bigger than 250,000, the chances of you it's expensive to get to 250,000 people if you're going to, and the chances of you getting there is it'll either take a long time or it'll be expensive, right? So
Mm.
don't be too adventurous with your haystack. Try and keep the haystack. So often I spend a lot of time explaining to people this is not a direct advertising channel. You are not going.
No.
It's not email. It is
No.
still a disruptive channel, and you're trying to get a haystack to get into the actual people you want to get to. Make that as pointy as you can, but
Yep.
recognize that you're still just getting into a news feed. Yeah.
Yep.
Um, this stuff here, I actually do quite like this. We don't do this for our clients, right? So this is actually particularly because I used to 3 or 4 years ago. I actually used to tell my small business clients that Instagram at the moment is a bit of a waste of money in terms of not
Yeah.
even money, more a waste of time
You
because
just can't.
effective.
Well, you can't put a call to action on it, can
Yeah,
you?
correct, right? So unless you're advertising, it was a bit of a waste of
Mm.
time. But then organically, what started to happen is that Facebook started to give you people greater reach on Instagram, and that's still the case now than they do on Facebook, right?
Mm.
And then the other thing is, as you said, you put a call to action on it, and hence why I think you can see all your things here, right? In the feed, I can see a little bit. On your page, I can't. So in your feed, I can still see a little bit of writing if I want to, right? Whether it's a person or
Yeah.
whether it's a business, I can still
Yeah.
see. But
But
I
when you
do
see this, you can't see anything.
I
Yeah.
do quite like this, right? And as I said, this is something that I would be saying to you. For Instagram, who do you use for this, and what might be the best, the best way? Because even around, I'm not sure. Again, I don't think you need to have a watermark on it. You may, but because I
Mm.
think in Instagram, if it's in my feed, um, I'm going to see it anyway. It's already
Yeah.
because it's always associated with your post.
Yes, it is.
But I would
Yeah.
say to you that of everything you do, you're actually doing Instagram probably better than we're doing for our clients,
Yep.
just because, um, in terms of other than the advertising, probably.
Yep.
Right. So, but I think from an organic perspective, I'd probably lean on you around that because I think personally, it hits me a little bit too much that it's so much wording, right?
Yep.
But at the same time, as I said, I think there's somewhere to work. So that's where I'd probably lean on you more than the other way around, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, and what I've done with that is try to take some key principles of branding.
Yep.
So initially, the blogs, when I do a blog, it's the blue background, it's the cream colored text. It's trying to be quite brief, but at the same time, try to put the blend of the text and an image.
Mhm.
And then when people kind of see that over a period of time, go, okay, that's another blog from Kaptura.
Yeah.
So
And
they
that's
kind of
probably
know
a
that's a
good point.
blog. Yeah,
And what I'd suggest, these are probably videos, are they? Little videos
yeah, yeah.
or yeah, okay.
Yeah, the ones with the little arrows are videos. The others are just images. Because if I did a video or an animation of the other ones, then you can't see the text. So I've just done them as images.
Oh yeah, and by
Yeah,
the way, this isn't Damien Lucas. This should be your business.
yeah. I don't
Just
know why that's up there.
just
That's
just
weird.
realize that that's actually Damien rather than your business. So yeah,
That's
um,
weird.
yeah, uh, that's being posting
Some
through as Damien. Even though so that's simply a name of the username. That's the username of the business. But
ah, yeah, it is.
that's your URL, right? So you want to change that.
How
Um,
do I change that?
yeah, you just go back into your profile, basically. So you go behind your business profile.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah,
it's put yeah, yeah,
yeah, um, yeah. And not just so there is. I would say there's probably ways to be a bit more pointy in here as well.
yeah.
Um, and what's
So
the
that should
link?
be fixed now.
Yeah. Is there any reason to go to Linktree rather than Captura Pro, the website?
So the reason why I put Linktree in there, because all majority of my posts that are in here are for the blog, and
Yeah.
you can't put a link in there apart from putting it through Linktree. So I've got my website in the Linktree. So if you go
Mm.
to Linktree, you can see the website's the first one, the second one's the
Oh,
blog.
yeah. Okay.
So at least I can get people to the blog if they're, and I've got a lot of people that, more of my friends are on, more of my friends basically go on Instagram than they do Facebook these days. So yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah,
I Yeah. I am. Is the Captura blog on the website?
it is, it
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Okay.
you think it should just basically put the
I think
website?
everything really should point to the one spot.
Yep.
Generally, it probably, to a degree, it probably does because of your business. Depending on how it's been set up under your business, there may
Yeah, it
well be
is.
an element you may, if it's got it under Damien Lucas. I have a feeling you may have set it up, even in your setup. There's potential that you might have set it like against your,
No,
your
I
no,
didn't. I just logged on the profile. If you went to it live now, it's changed. It's just,
you've
yeah,
just
right where it says
updated it.
Damien, it
Yeah,
just says
okay,
Kaz Captura.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it
sure.
just pre-filled it from when it tries to remember who what's what. So
So I think in terms of that, there'd be a combination. As I said, I think I do like an element of a softened approach of maybe not quite so big, chunky
yep,
text. But I also think you probably need a combination of maybe this is the sort of thing I'm talking about, right?
mm,
Which whether it's a video or an image, maybe it
yep,
just needs this thing rather than this thing. And maybe to get a slightly, because we're every second day, so I
mm,
would be sort of thinking that every second day at least, um, at minimum, you'd be wanting to have this sort of imagery rather than this might only be a once a week sort of imagery,
yeah,
because
yeah,
people, a
and
lot of
and
people,
those are
particularly in
probably
certain industries, often
yeah,
start curating an Instagram gallery. Well, good luck. It's, because that's sort of suggesting that Instagram or Facebook, then they try and replace their website. And that's not my strategy, right?
mm,
So often, if you're creating Instagram galleries, you're potentially spending time where you might be better off spending it somewhere else, or just spend $1 and promote it. Value your own time and actually get more
yeah,
mileage that way.
yeah, yeah,
Um, Clearly, Twitter just needs creating. I just thought it would be
yeah.
interesting to see if anything's
I
being spoken
started
about.
I started the other day, and I went, Oh fuck, I haven't got the time for it to
Don't
put,
do it.
you
Yeah,
know, doing another background image, doing another this, because every one of these things takes
yeah, yeah, yeah,
different pixel hit widths and heights and all that type of shit. So
yeah.
it's like, yeah, I need to kind of go back into Canva and recreate them for Twitter.
Yeah, isn't it interesting when I click on the actual Google map, it does actually bring up what you've potentially put as the image for the business, but it puts up the same banner, right? Which is
Yeah, that's a
good.
video. That's a video. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
the
think.
the, the reason again that we often sort of talk about not putting fonts across it is then how it reads on the different depending on what you're looking at.
Yeah,
Certain
and
things you
depending
just
on
can't
devices
read
and
it, right?
screens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Kaptura was interesting. I kind of felt like I'd got into something to do with Afghanistan when you put it into. But I think did I find one in the end for you? I didn't. No. You've got you've
No,
got a you've
I
got a
haven't got that
YouTube
many
channel, but you said you
followers.
haven't put it up. Well, as I
Yeah,
said,
no,
all I can
I've got
do.
a YouTube channel, but it's not too many followers. So give me, I'll it's one of those things you need to get to a certain, like I've got 3 subscribers,
Yeah, but I
and
wouldn't.
I've
Yeah,
and
again,
I've
I
got
wouldn't.
3 public videos.
That
So
would change pretty quickly, and that's the same as everybody, right? So,
yeah,
so all I would say is to think of it as a landing page, and if anybody's trying to proof you, you're basically just saying, well, we're on our way. But realistically, and I guess the thing is, you don't need to necessarily promote it initially. But yeah, anyway, it's up.
yeah.
But
So Steve, while you're there,
yeah,
so what's fresh?
yeah.
I just put in the chat of this of
Oh yeah,
whereby the YouTube channel, so you
yeah,
can actually click on it and go to it, so you can actually see it,
sure.
and you'll see it's pretty basic. It's only got 3 public videos on it, but it's just simple. It's just got a link to the website,
Yeah.
and because I don't have enough followers and enough videos on there,
Oh
it
yeah.
won't let me customize the name of it yet. So
Yeah. No, that's right. You need 100, I think, but that's okay.
yeah,
You get there. There you go. Yeah, well, again, as I said, you've been consistent using the same.
mm,
And then you know that in your about you basically um, can add all your other links and that sort of stuff
mm,
too, and even branding and that sort of stuff to videos. So, um, yeah, you've got the makings. A lot of your stuff is just revision on the basis
yeah,
of, um, and none of it's forever, right? You can always chop and
mm.
change at different times. I
You can
change
change
my
it every
covers
day if you
every
wanted to.
I change
Yeah,
them every quarter. I pretty much
yeah,
and whether they're ideal, but I kind of use a montage type um, of clients, right? So it's as simple as
yeah,
of a mix of what we do and our clients, and it's not a very good version. I'll just cut it and I'll keep it for later as well, just so I remember to do it, and that way when I go to look at my screen, I go, "What the heck is that image?" And I'll have to save it into your channel. Anyway, yeah, cool. Um, yeah, so they're the channels that we look at, right? So as you
mm,
said, they're all there. Um,
mm,
they're and then usually what we do, yeah, it always takes a shitload of time to, for some reason, to actually upload it. Is we just talk about, which I think I showed you last time, right? So I'm not going to labour the point, but
mm.
basically the strategy, right?
Yep,
Um, you actually in the house, basically you sit below me
yep,
realistically. Yeah. So in fact, there's an argument to say, certainly from a promotions perspective, if you don't have your content, then how the hell am I going to work with you? So
yep.
I guess the argument is you don't necessarily have to have video content, but the reality
No,
is you do need to have content to be able to, for me to be able to communicate
to
it
do
and
your
and
top.
and
Yeah,
promote it. We spend a lot of time with our and a lot of the stuff, even to your point around, oh yeah, I'm not sure yet. The main thing people are going to proof you, I believe, is they're just going to see that you've got a lot of this stuff. I
yeah,
hear what you're saying is, you want to see that there's some activity. Um, but if you wait for activity to be the reason for doing some of this stuff, then some businesses might not ever start doing it. You know what I
no,
mean?
exactly.
So
Yeah, cart before the horse,
you've made
or
a
the horse
good
before the
start.
cart. Yeah,
And
yeah,
unlike many businesses, sometimes if you're not Damien from Monash Marketing, with your background, that you're Damien and you're at Buckley's Auto, who I went and saw today, I'd be like, I'd have some concerns because he'd be telling me, "Oh, my niece did this for me," or the lady from the office, and often it's very bloody hard to actually then work out how the hell do I access them, right?
Yeah.
So I had a business strategy guy say to me, because often that's the other thing is people say, "Well, I've already got these set up. Why do I need to pay you any more to revise them?" I said, "This business coach said to me, really? Yeah, I should be charging you double to fix those, but I tell you what, I'll just keep it at the same price." But I think when he said that, I didn't probably get it. But
Yeah.
over the journey and certain times, it is often harder
Yeah.
with established sites, particularly for those reasons, than it is for actually for ones where you're starting with nothing, right?
Mm.
So anyway, the reality is for a lot of our clients, pretty quick from a setup perspective to make them look as good as anybody they're competing with in terms
Yes.
of just make sure it's all set up correctly.
Visual. Yeah.
And you've got the six main brands, blah, 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 right? Um, then when we talk to them about, the culmination of continuing to get the people coming back as well as acquiring new ones, that's where we sort of start saying, well, who are you currently working with? Who are you looking to work with? Because your prospects probably look similar to the people you've worked with in the past. That helps us
Mm.
have some thoughts around who you might be advertising to, right?
Yeah.
And again, just in layman's term, to who I'm normally talking from a small business, and I know you talk it generally at a higher level potentially, but I'm just telling them, well, who do you work with at the moment, right? Basically, if that's who you want to continue to work with, then we're going to use a strategy to try and get to people that don't currently know who you are,
Yeah.
right? And so, as I said, website's really important with us. If it's a shit website, it makes our job really hard, right?
Yeah.
So your website's clearly not that because it's important. But we do use the content from the website to repurpose it to the channels
Other
with the
channels.
intent
Yeah.
to get people to pick up the phone. We don't care how they do it. We don't care if they read the post and pick up the phone. We don't care if they read the post and do an email to you. We don't care if they read the post and click on the link and go to you. Um,
Mm.
the good thing, if they click on the link, then it's easier for us to say, okay, look, the pixel's measuring that people are going there. And it's easier for me to say, well, certain things that we're doing look like they're working. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but again, we think that chunky websites with easy get people to do what you want them to do are the way to go. Um, and so, hence, that's why we sort of show that little
Mm.
visual. We do want consistency generally across the banner advertising of a website, or not the banner advertising, but let's call it the banner visuals
Yeah.
to be consistent across the social media covers, so we know it's the same. At the moment, you've got really good consistency across your socials, but that image probably isn't used back on your website necessarily, is
No,
it?
and the fortunate thing about the website that we've got is that we wanted something that had full video through it,
Yeah, yeah.
which means that you take all our key branding colors off it,
Hmm.
in the first instance when you hit the landing page,
Yeah, yeah.
which doesn't allow me to get that blue and that kind of cream color coming to life unless you click through the other content.
Yeah,
So
and I
that's
don't I
that's
don't
that's
think
the
it's a
that's
big
the
deal.
that's the that's the
But
that's the bugger with it, unfortunately.
but you've said you
Um,
guys do really good imagery as well, just stills, right? So
yeah,
realistically, what you just want to do is probably watermark some imagery from the videos that you're using or gonna use,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
and you just use choose what's to start with. I don't know how easy it would be with the waves to feel like you've got a
yeah.
really good yeah
Yeah, I mean, I mean that's a video that obviously my business partner took.
yeah.
It's a video I've got in Canva. Canva's pretty cool. You can literally just go in there and save
Yeah.
it as an image rather than save it as a video.
Yeah, but
So
and I think though, but with when you're actually advertising, you'd probably use the video, right? So you'd actually just use
yeah,
the lapping video, right? And from an advertising point of view, perfect, right? It doesn't need to
yeah,
be, and then clearly with Instagram, you probably want one with more overlay of wording and stuff, right? So
yep.
even when it is, but anyway, I think I've talked about this enough, haven't I? I can't. I start to get confused who I talked to about this or not. But remember, when I'm talking to you, I want you to think of
Mm,
best practice for the people you're working with as well, right? So,
yes,
so
yeah,
again, think of it from the perspective of um, I don't know if you said Auto One, for instance, but if you're
Yeah.
Auto One Williamstown, if there is one, or Footscray,
Mm.
that's the
Yep.
context to think of it, right? So I'm often sort of saying it doesn't make any difference to me whether it's a franchise brand or if it's the key player in the local, right? That's
Yep.
your competitor, right? So
Yep.
so to think of it from a local business perspective, we know that less than 50% even have a Facebook page.
Yep.
And of that local business, we know that less than 30% of them have ever advertised, right?
Yep.
So then from a corporate perspective, you kind of know, well, it's quite powerful then if I know that realistically, probably 5% of my competitors are probably doing what I'm doing.
Yes.
If I'm going to, as a local business, promote with good content on my social media channel, aka Facebook and Instagram, I'm doing what 95% of my competitors aren't doing,
Yep.
most likely. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's the understanding as a fellow marketing guy. That's what I
Mm.
try and explain to people. Right, 95% of
Yep.
businesses aren't doing this, and even the 5% that are often getting very bled.
Yeah.
And you would know, right? So
Well,
let's
they're getting gouged. I mean, all the
yeah,
franchisees that I used to do with used to get gouged.
they get
Yeah.
gouged, and it's often gouged at the brand level
Mm.
in a way that uh, doesn't benefit the local business as well as it might. So in other words, it's
Yeah.
one thing to get gouged. Let's say, okay, you're paying 100 grand, but you
Mm.
might have 100 small businesses that you're using that 100 grand to try and benefit. The problem is those businesses aren't getting their 1 grand benefit, if that makes
No.
sense, right? So
Yeah.
that's probably more's the point. So
Yeah.
and maybe, and I think in a way that's our opportunity, whatever the number is, right, is the way that I think our best opportunity is to sort of say, how do you make sure that the video content that you're providing for the client that you're providing is still doing it so that the ultimate beneficiary, I think, is the local business person, right?
Yeah.
Particularly with our strategy, is that how do you make sure that that 5 grand or that 500 grand or 50 grand or whatever it is spread in
Mm.
such a way that the business guy is getting the maximum benefit, and the
Yeah.
brand is still getting the
Each of the
benefit.
local
Yeah,
yeah
yeah,
each of the local businesses are getting the benefit,
yeah,
and at the same time, so's the overall brand, rather than the overall brand does,
yeah.
but the local business gets nothing from it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the good thing for me to explain this to you, because as you said, you're starting out in the journey, so you feel and understand the pain of the people I normally talk to, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
my own
It's
pain,
painful.
as
It's
someone
painful.
who makes their own livelihood, right? So
Yeah.
we just go through that step, and realistically, for many people, it's been along the lines of, well, this might not be right. You might not be ready to do this yet, or whatever the case might be. But we sort of, I've learned through my journey is at least I want it to be something that I know people will go, well, actually, I want to be able to do this, or I want to be able
Yeah.
to. So, basically the consultant setup, the consult, well, as you can see now, well, we waive that back. I'm not sending you a bill, right? But, we
Mm.
waive 50% of that back to the people that then progress with us, right?
Yeah.
And so we do that on the basis of, otherwise we just get way too many tire kickers. I just get
Yeah.
I get so many inquiries from people that, and so that's why I have the brochure. I just
Yeah.
send the brochure. That's our pricing, as you can see, our pricing on the website as well. So it just
Yeah.
gets rid of the fact that
Tire
everybody
kickers.
wants to
Yeah.
do
Time
this.
wasters.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it just helps us rid ourselves of those. And so, but as I said, but I'm still wanting to get people on. So it's still a bit of a loss leader for me in terms of getting to the point where I want to get to. Um, but
Hmm.
um, but realistically, the setup and plan, certain businesses, if they are starting out, to set up your 6 social media channels, for I think it's about $600, let's call it, right?
Yep.
So to have 6 social media channels set up for $600,
That's cheap.
compared to what it costs your website, for instance, that's 3 hour session, and it's a bit like me hiring in the TV antenna guy,
Mm.
right? I know they're going to do a good job,
Yeah.
so that's how I try and explain that to people.
And it's going to be done properly, rather than going, well, your Twitter's good, but your Facebook looks terrible, and
Yeah.
your Instagram's missing some bits. Yeah.
And people worry as well is that they might have forgotten things or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So then the planning session is merely around how do you set up your ads manager and who you're going to target. and
mm,
then what sort of schedule of posts. In a way, we don't use a calendar, right? So people talk in social media about a calendar. We use a
mm.
strategy that is a repurposing strategy that effectively fits the same purpose, right?
Yep,
It's like, what are we going to post and how often?
yep,
Because it's all about newsfeed. Other than our clients and myself and whoever we're working with, they don't really know what we're posting on each day, but we know,
yep, yep,
right? Because if we're talking about this particular service or whatever it might well be, and then it's whatever you want to talk around from an ad campaign, and so then people can sort of do it. Roughly the setup and planning. It's about a grand. Thereabouts,
yeah,
slightly over, right? For the 2 sessions, and then it's just a choice of management, right? Do you want to go extra small or extra small or small? In the past, I used to only have, I think I told you last time, to start with,
mm,
I only had small to medium. And then I went, oh shit, I better make a small and I better make an extra small, right? And over time, what's happened is I've become probably 80-20 small initially to I think it's actually swung now. It's probably, it's fair to say 50-50, but if I'm really pushed, people, and particularly in COVID, will start. The extra small now is particular because of the BNI type client. That extra small comes in, but I actually do now have an extra small, right? And one of my clients says to me, Steve, it seems to me that you only have bronze medal, fourth place, and fifth place, right? And so again, why I'm talking to you, so that effectively it's not because what I want to have, it's just because I'm nice and I feel like I can help fourth and fifth place as well as the
yeah.
bronze medalist. Yeah. But
You,
that
yeah,
gives you a bit of context. Yeah.
you're a lovely guy, Steve, but you're too nice.
Maybe. Yeah. I know.
You're
That's
too
true.
nice. You're giving too much value away, mate.
That's often the case. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
um, but there's what do they say? There's reasoning to my madness.
yeah,
I think that I believe, because again, just coming back to what I just said to you, right? You're starting
mm,
out now in this small bit. We know I've gone through it, right? So what I think as a small business person is fair and reasonable and what they can manage with. And because it's my experience, I guess I
yeah,
qualify that. And then the more people I talk to, then I qualify it again.
yeah,
I have made a few changes in pricing, over the journey, including more recently. And generally, there's a reason for doing that, not just um, to provide more value. There's a financial incentive in that.
yeah,
Um, but you can understand, right, that my pricing is perfectly good for me financially if instead of only getting 3 clients in the door or 5 clients in the door every month, all of a sudden I'm getting 30 clients or
yeah,
35 clients, and I can work out how to deliver that in such a way that I'm going to do more and more well. I haven't worked it out yet, by the way. I'm close. But yeah, so yeah, anyway, the point is, I believe that's fair and equitable. But the reason as well is that because of the clients that we typically work with, the reason I added this at the end, this would
mm,
be who you'd also be working with, right? So I don't know
yeah,
if you've used these guys before with your in your corporate, have you?
yeah, yeah. I've had a good and negative experience with Reach Local
Yeah, yeah,
when
okay.
I was at Autobarn and also Midas, looking
Yeah,
after
okay.
those two brands.
Yep.
They this is at the brand level.
Was the good
Um,
first and bad second, or bad first and good
so
second?
they were really good when I first started there. Like, because basically I was trying to come to grips with what was happening with Midas and ABS Auto
Yeah, yeah,
and what they've been doing, and budgets and so forth, and where we're getting value from it. And the more I looked and the more I inquired, they couldn't give me the performance that they were saying they were giving me every month. So when I looked a bit deeper, I was like, you're telling me that I'm getting this business on page one in this position for Midas Auto, and then I know it changes on a daily basis and weekly basis, and it's like it's like the stock market. But every day I've checked this particular business, and it's not on page one.
yeah,
So
yeah,
until you can kind of prove to me that that's been happening,
yeah.
um, so we had a bit of a rocky road there for a little while.
How long ago was that?
Oh wow, Autobahn back in, I reckon that would be probably a good 5 years ago. A good 5 years ago.
Yeah, I get the sense, and I'm not sure, right? I can't
Mm,
tell you. Um, because I remember when I was first starting out, remember I'm coming in blind, right? I've never
Mm,
worked agency. I've
yeah.
never worked corporately.
Mm,
And, um, other than working with the Melbourne Tigers and then initially having this software for GNC Live Well, that's the closest, right? Ironically, that was
mm.
initially straight after. But I do remember with the guys that I was working with, I remember Reach Local, but I just didn't know enough to know what they would like or whatever. But subsequently, and I've only really been introduced to them really recently in the last,
Yeah,
I would almost say, I don't think it was even before Christmas. I reckon it was this year after
yeah,
Christmas, maybe early February or March this year, right? They
yep,
sit, and so I guess what I was going to say is, and so Jeff, who's on the bottom of this, right?
yep,
So Jeff is clearly um, is very clear and understands what their journey's been like, particularly in Melbourne, right? And he's a
mm,
Canadian guy, right? So he's married, I think, to a local girl. Um, he's clearly very good at the sales side of things, right?
mm,
But how he helps me out, but just before I say that is, I've heard, because I'm doing some stuff with gyms, right? So the gyms
mm,
group, and one of the guys he's a master franchiser for gyms cleaning, and so it has 187. And
mm,
he was when he actually saw, okay, I'm affiliated, in some way with Reach Loca, he was a bit like, whoa, hang on, up until
mm.
now, I'm loving you, right? But there's a
Yeah,
bit like, for whatever reason, and I don't think he even knew himself. It was almost like, I think I've had a bad experience at some point, right? But then, and so often I don't really know what I don't know is what I'm saying to around 4 or 5 years
yeah, no,
ago.
no, no,
Yeah,
but that was 5 years ago. So
yeah,
that's, I
yeah.
mean, a lot changes, but
But
there are a lot of ex-census people that kind of started up Reach Local and originally. And again, it was, I think they've been cashing checks for Autobahn and Midas and ABS without anyone questioning or interrogating or getting explained what was going on. They'd send the report, no one would read it. They send the bill and the invoice would get paid. So
yeah, yeah. So just
it,
open talk,
yeah,
you and me. I
mm,
think Reach Local makes for a very good partner on the
mm.
basis that they leverage me out of into the markets that I'm talking to you about.
Yeah, yeah, no, no.
To be able to play
Yeah,
the game. And just so you
mm,
understand as well, is because I'm sure you get it right in that
mm.
I've had a lot of clients come and go where they think that social media is this secret sauce. I just need to spend money and I'm just going to hear the till go ka-ching, 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 right?
Yeah,
So those clients, basically, whenever we get to a spend more than 15 bucks a day,
yeah.
I say, let's go and have a talk to my friend Jeff at Reach Local. Because what I'm
No,
hearing
I
is,
think it's a great
yeah,
it's a great strategy
yeah,
because seriously, at the end of the day, I've been at the top, like higher scale than you,
mm,
in a sense of paid digital advertising, and when you're trying to dumb it down and make it affordable for individual businesses, which is what I was trying to do for the franchisees,
mm,
the top end of town couldn't do this.
yeah, yeah,
This is
yeah,
this is exactly what I was asking them to do. Put a proposal together where you can amortize the costs,
mm,
yeah, for stores wanting to pay more than what they pay in their advertising fees. So the brand pays that for them
mm,
to do over and above for their business in digital advertising. Break it down. So here's a package for search. Here's a package for
yeah, yeah,
display. Here's a package for YouTube. Here's a package for SEO. And and I literally had briefed them to do something like you've got here with Jeff,
mm,
and their brain would burst. They
yeah,
couldn't.
yeah,
They were thinking, go to one space, and then they work it out. It's like, no, no, no. I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to leverage you and your economies of scale to
mm,
give a package you can amortize over 300 stores or 200 stores or
yeah,
150
yeah,
stores, and make it really easy for them to go. I want small, medium, or large.
yeah,
I
yeah,
want
yeah,
a small package on search, and I want a large package on YouTube, and I want a medium package on SEO.
yeah,
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 so it was just really easy for them to pick from the menu. So,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, it's so for me, I think this is perfect for you, for me, for anyone really. It's
yeah, yeah.
as long as you get something back kickback from it, mate. So long
Yeah,
as you
yeah. Well,
commission.
I do. It's so just so you know, in terms of when I do the advertising,
Hmm,
we for our small business clients, we do 10% of their spend, right, on Facebook,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And so that typically looks like I just send them a bill once a year, right? Because
Mm.
effectively they might spend 1,000 and I send them a bill for 100. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
so
Yeah.
it's basically just a little bit that it's almost like a Christmas bonus. But here the affiliation is about 6%, right?
Mm.
But clearly. What we talk about here
Mm.
is it's a much greater spend. That's the first thing, right?
Yep.
So
Bigger spend,
and
so the percentage is.
secondly, they're an ask to kick. I'm not an ask to kick, right? So I keep them
Yep.
honest, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
effectively, and I do what I believe in, right? I don't believe that
Mm.
you can just do reach local and not do what I do. I just don't
No,
believe in it,
you've got to
right?
do both.
You can't do one or the other. So that's the flip of the story. Is that then Jeff
Mm.
goes, oh look, they can't afford us. They just can't afford to do the spend that we talk about. I think you should talk. So I'm pointing them to you, right? So, but the benefit for you and I in particular is
Mm-hmm.
that these guys are in with National Australia Bank now, right?
Yep.
And so they're National Australia Bank businesses, right? So and
Yep.
so his boss is pitching into them, right, and their
Mm.
connections and all that sort of stuff, right? And so then you have this whole huge pot of whatever it looks like. And I agree with you. Census and yellow is exactly the same, right? So yellow and census, they're just
The same
or
offer.
yellow is the
It's the same
same,
offer.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just all about paid. You're just a number, right? So
Yeah. And
so
so my thoughts for you on this is that you should be getting a higher percentage of of the business that you're sending their way.
yeah,
So
potentially, and that may happen.
yeah,
Yeah,
and I don't mean right like next week and next month, but give it a degree of relativity. So typically, agencies, media agencies, make 10% on traditional media. So
yeah,
you think about TV, radio, outdoor signage,
yeah.
that type of stuff. Yeah. When it comes to digital, they all and the terminology or the breakdown of what digital is can be very vague and very
Broad.
yeah, broad.
Mm,
But from a digital advertising perspective, there's typically a surcharge for it, yeah,
mm,
on top of what the media costs. And that could be anywhere, depending on the contract that I've had with different agencies, anywhere from 8% to 10%.
yeah.
Some have had an 8% of so I spend 80 grand, and they send me an 8% of that on top of that, not included in that, on top
Mm,
of that, as a basically a digital surcharge, so
yep.
to speak. So yeah, there's I think you've got a bit of
I
movement
think
there if you've got about 6% now,
I am
but
as
it depends on how much work's going their way. So
you and I. I'll just do an intro by
mm.
LinkedIn, and but effectively that's something that I'm sure I'm building towards, if that makes sense. And I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah,
too
good,
fussed about it at
good.
the moment. Um, yeah, in fact,
As long as the size of the pie is growing, yeah.
I was probably more fussed about the fact that there's probably a couple of things, right? The first thing was the clients that I've been sending him,
Mm.
particularly that more recently, there was a big LED, the digital media type one in
Yeah,
Sydney.
yep.
And it didn't play out, right? So because
Mm.
of probably Sydney being the way that it is, and I think there was somebody else. There was an investment guy before that, right? That was really
Mm.
riding me in terms of, he was probably taking his 2% off his $1 million whatever properties that were being bought, but then had expectations that he only needed. So I really sort of straightened him right up in terms of his social media marketing, and then sort of put him onto Jeff. So in a way, so the first thing is the clients that I've sort of put to Jeff haven't quite struck yet. That's the first thing. And then the
Yep.
second thing is that I wasn't seeing too much coming my way, but I
Mm.
think there's been an element of that's probably changed, to be fair, over the last month or
Yeah,
so.
good.
Yeah, so and then there's another property services group where we had an existing relationship with another SEO type, where we probably almost, yeah, murkied the water a little bit. Yeah, but we're just building. It's just an early building relationship. And in
Yep.
fact, how I found him in the first place was another video person, right? So
Mm.
they was, clearly he rang me up and someone's telling me you are who I should talk to, that sort of thing.
Yep.
Right. So realistically, I'm well aware. In fact, they even, when they talk about affiliates, we're almost called frenemies, which I don't think is the best way to sell it, right? But
No, no,
effectively,
it shouldn't be. No.
but
Yep.
effectively, it's not even accurate, right? Because I don't
No.
believe they do what I do. They certainly don't do what you do, right? So,
No. Yeah.
they're not creating content as such, right? Um,
Yep.
so, yeah, so I think there is an opportunity to be friends. And as I said, for me, it's particularly with the audience I think that you're wanting to work with and who I'm wanting to work
Mm.
with you. This becomes an important part, which is why I sort of PDF'd it on it, right? So,
Yeah.
just so
No.
you're
No.
kind of across it, yeah.
I think it's good. I think it's for definitely for some certain clients.
Hmm.
But also, I think when we get a bit some bigger clients, I think that's when then basically you and I kind of. I mean, I've got three media agencies that I'm really good friends with.
Mm.
Two of them I know the owners extremely well,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and they can buy and sell any media that we care to worry about dealing with. So
yeah, yeah.
Facebook, Facebook, Instagram,
Whatever it looked like. Yeah, yeah.
search, social, paid, or they do the whole lot, and they can deal with
Mm.
a whole lot. And then if they want local area marketing, which a lot of these businesses do want access to, what's the digital signage around here? What's the outdoor signage around here?
Yeah,
What are the opportunities? What's the local petrol station that's close to that particular business that we could use Val Morgan screens on the pumps?
mm.
So it really and not and if it's a local area marketing opportunity like that, then you can actually kind of work out the scale on whether it's actually worthwhile for them to do or not. But they'll
Yeah,
do the legwork,
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
and
That makes sense.
normally they won't do the legwork for that stuff because it's like, well, it's one client and it's one business, but because of the relationship that I've got, then well, if Damo gives me a few of those, then it's worth our while to do it.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
No, that sounds good. No, but so
Yeah.
so I guess for us is, that's the thing. So I'm within your schedule, I'm happy to sort of at least in the first time is if you want to spend a bit of time and we just get it set up the way that we'd get it set up, and I kind of see it as a bit of an investment in a relationship and what it might look
Mm.
like. So
Yep.
I just sort of
And
take it through. Yeah.
yeah, and a bit for me, like whatever help you can give me, I'll give you back in the same way. So,
Hmm.
any type of video, animation, any of that type of stuff together that we can offer, or photography, then I'll reciprocate back to you to help you out with anything that you're actually doing. So,
Yeah, I think as I said, I think one of the things to think about is it's almost like I've become pretty systemized. It's just like almost templating.
yeah,
It might be that you help me across the idea of, okay, what could your if you've got these videos, what could a bit of a template or even photos and imagery, what could a template overlay look like
mm,
for these sort of things? And maybe that's the way to look at it, and then I just sort of go, and it could be that I'm doing this for you, but then clearly you're going to come across people that say, well, you go and Steve can do that for you, and yeah, you'll think of me. But similarly,
yeah,
the same thing is, I'm thinking that if you're there's certain things that you might do for me and my business, but it might be that you do for my businesses, if that makes sense.
yes,
Is
yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I think
yeah,
Damien could, might be some of your quick and dirty sort of stuff that it just sort of tie, oh, yeah, Damien could easily, add some
yeah.
stuff to that sort of imagery or that, whatever the imagery looks like.
Look, I could help literally without having to do um, much. I mean, obviously, a conversation with you and get a bit of a background. But like I was saying to you when we first caught up, I'm helping out a friend of mine with a restaurant, and I've been doing
Mm,
social media posts for her.
mm,
But not the stuff that you're doing. But this is like
mm.
offer based. So if it's a
Sure,
restaurant,
yeah, yeah.
how do I position their offers and how they can purchase from them? For the flotation tank, how can I actually help them position their offers or what they go to market with and actually make sure it's consistent in that particular way. So I can put that together from imagery and videos and so forth within Canva and get
Mm,
their logos and that type of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
And I enjoy that. It's a creative outlet for me, but I can
yeah,
do that
yeah.
pretty easily and quickly for you and with you. And that could actually and that it's I'm making it sound quite small, but the impact that actually has on those
Yeah.
businesses is quite large. There's another business I did some stuff for.
Particularly if you enjoy doing that, Damien, that's good because
Yeah.
I think there's a part of me that I can't be asked doing it.
No, I like the creative outlet. So there's a
mm,
brewery, well, not a boutique, but a craft brewery up in Clayton, which is not far from where I live.
mm.
And two Sri Lankan guys have started a brewery up there, and it's called Two Rupees.
Oh yeah,
And I'd been doing some
that's a
stuff
good name. I like
for
it.
for my restaurant friend, and they do takeaway cocktails. So you put in like almost like a flask, and you get two cocktails out of it.
Yeah,
And I did some stuff for her. Actually, there were Instagram stories I did for her, and then I showed them to the brewery guys, and I said, "Fuck, can you do that for us? Can you do that with our cans of beer and our glasses of beer?" And I did that, and then they
yeah,
used them on their
awesome,
stories.
cool.
They didn't give any fucking money for it, but and they didn't
They
even give
should
me a
because
beer
that's
for it.
almost like being an influencer. Where you do photos, they
Yeah,
should actually at least give you some in kind stuff.
no, but that was okay. But that for me, it was it's really enjoyable to do. Actually, it's part of it's a bit of fun to do at the same time. It doesn't feel like work. But
Yeah,
if I can do that with you and some of your clients, mate, that's easy because it can look really good without having to spend hours and hours
yeah,
of work
yeah.
on
No,
it. So
absolutely.
yeah,
I think there's an really really good opportunity here, as I said, and there's, I am. Last this time last year, I use a thing called Basecamp, right, to manage my projects.
yep,
And this time
yep,
last year, at the top of my list, there was I don't know, 14 marketers, with the number 20 in front of them, right? So 20. This year, I've got I've got three projects. I think I might have done one for you already, but anyway, but they're
mm,
just collaborative concepts at this stage in terms
yeah,
of projects that I'm going to invest in other sort of collaborations where I think are going to have a lot of legs, and
mm,
really could be, so I think this is a really good investment of my time, and I think and I'm pretty sure, and I'm saying that on the basis that it is my time, but I think investing in you, I think is going to have payback, and I'd like to
yeah,
sort of assure you that I believe that both ways, I think this is going to be
yeah.
a
Look,
good
I
investment of
think
our time.
we're both entrepreneurs.
Mm,
You've been doing it a bit longer than me, and we're both kind of cut from the same cloth from that perspective. It's just let's collaborate together. As a project comes up, let's work together on how we can actually work on that project together,
mm, yeah,
and then we'll see kind of what comes of it. But what I'm going to do next week is get you in contact with some key people in some franchise land. So I know some people are still working at Autobarn. I know the guy that does all the local area marketing at Autobarn, Midas, and ABS.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I actually hired him. So
Did you?
he's
It's
just clicked
funny
up
what
his
comes
five
around goes around. Yeah,
clicked up his 5 years there. So I'll reach out to Cameron at Autobarn and Midas,
yeah.
and introduce you guys because there's a lot of franchisees that could do with your help,
Oh, that'd be awesome.
ASAP. The same
Blokes in
at
their
Cluck
40
Rubber as well.
pluses, which I reckon most of the Autoburn ones would be,
Yep,
are
males,
definitely my
males,
bag.
40s, 50s. Yep,
I
yep,
get
that's
along. I
exactly
get
it.
along very well with my fellow blokes.
But there's also a lot of people in the hospitality space, particularly this side of town,
Yeah.
through my friend,
Mm,
who have no fucking idea what to do.
mm.
So there's some recommendations that I can send down your way as well. So yeah,
Let's then the other thing, that's awesome. And as I said, I'll certainly, the other good thing is the fact that if you and I are both going through stuff, if you get that thing with Steve, then in actual fact, you're hitting the ground running, my friend. Because
yeah,
I've had to go through a world of pain to then go with him again, right? I've worked with a few people, it's fair to say, but
yeah,
he's very good, right? So he's
yeah. Thank
very
you for that.
good at.
Thank you for helping me skip to the front of the queue there.
Yeah, well, I think the thing is, as you said, so yeah, that's right. Don't learn from my mistakes by watching, or whatever. Learn from my mistakes, but it's hard to do that without doing it yourself.
Yeah,
But yeah. So Steve, I mean, as I said with Jeff, I think even no matter, I know you've got a lot of those contacts, but I think with Jeff, just because I think
mm,
you'd want to kind of just you could have him at least explain to you what they're up to nowadays and where they're at, um,
yep.
and then. And
5
also,
years is
I
a
think
long
I'm going
time,
to
though.
brief. I'm
So
going to sort of go on that basis that you and I are kind of looking at, developing, right, stuff, as we go ahead and really do some good stuff together, I think, so.
Yeah. Look, I mean, the other thing we talked about was packages. So trying to
Mm,
work out, like a photography and a videography package. So if you know, all I kind of need to work with you is actually understanding of the type of budgets that people might entertain to get some photography and videography done.
yeah, yeah,
And if I understand what that budget is, then I can work with my business partner and say, so what could we offer for that much money, and
yeah,
and
yeah.
make it worth our while, and then we can kind of brand that and package that together.
And I think we hit the nail on the head a little bit when we were talking, right? Because you know what you're generally going to pitch in around things, right? So,
Mm,
um, yeah, and one without the other often doesn't go too well. It's fair to say,
hmm.
right? So again, that world. So I would just be thinking, well, okay, from your end, because I'm not going to tell you, from a pricing. Although in the back of my head there is an element of like, um,
You'll know what they can afford, though, Steve.
yeah, in the back of my head, I kind of think of it's a little bit like a website, right? So,
Mm,
a WordPress website, let's call it somewhere between 2.5 grand and 4.5 grand.
yep.
Let's say that, right? I reckon really good video packages, um, you've got to have that in mind. So, but I would think
Mm,
that if you sort of, okay, you don't necessarily want to be, your early one might be slightly lower than what your website is. So your entry level stuff, but I don't think you need to be talking under four figures ever. You know what I mean? My
yeah.
sense is
Okay.
that you'd always
Yep.
be wanting to talk around. I always think of photographers, right? Their entry offer is always a LinkedIn snapshot, right? So yeah, they can talk in the hundreds, maybe,
Yep.
yeah. But I
Yep.
think when you're talking video, I think you always want to be talking that sort of, again, if I'm running a business and just off the top of my head, I'm
Yeah.
thinking you want to be talking somewhere between 1,250, let's say, and
Yep.
yeah, and then you've got your first level package, which is in that 10 grand, right? But then
Yeah.
but you're really
Oh, that's a
talking,
different space. Yeah. Yep.
for videos, right? So
Yeah.
really, what I would be thinking is, well, yeah, well, we can do something from a 1,250 to 2 grand or whatever, when we can start to having a conversation with you if that's what you're talking about, right? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So maybe that's the thing. And as I said to you, look, I'm always honest with you, right? So
Mm,
we've good gravy. You can have a look at them. Is really for that. That's the sort of thing we sort of say to them is that if you're going to come to us and talk to about something you want to offer the B&I type business,
mm,
then that's probably the space you need to look. And he knows that, right? So he's already
yeah.
gone into that sort of client and probably undersold his services at times,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So, so just on that learning, I would sort of say is that, anything that then you'd have the multiplier effect that then saying, well, okay, if we're talking 100 businesses, well, that's 100 times 1,000, right? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so that's the
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. That's good. It was just more trying to work out the kind of the entry point, and then we can put some kind of like, okay, well, that'll mean that we'll work out the time,
Yeah,
and then we'll work out how roughly how many shots or how many videos, and the length of those videos, and then we can actually start to make that actually something
yeah,
that's a
yeah.
bit more real, and it's a package that we can you can talk about, you can put in a flyer or a brochure, you can put
Correct.
on a
Yeah, well,
website. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
again, we're often selective, but yeah, so I'm not going to put it to the bloke that I know is struggling to pay my fees. You know what I mean?
No.
But
Yeah.
there's ones where we're working with, let's say for instance, Mortgage Choice, right?
Mm,
I know that he gets stuff done, so
mm,
there's no reason why I wouldn't go to Mortgage Choice and sort of say it. Jim's is an interesting one because Jim leans on his digital guy is a
yeah.
video guy. Do you know Joel?
Yeah. No,
Joel.
I don't
So
know, Joel. No.
yeah, so
No,
Joel
I don't know, Joel.
Kleber is basically Jim rates him very highly, right? So,
Yeah.
but he thinks Joel knows everything and everything, right? So, and Joel's the first to admit that he doesn't, right? So Joel's a great
Yeah.
guy, and again, a really good guy for you to know, right?
Mm.
Um, so I don't know if you want me to introduce you to Joel too, right? So
Yeah,
that's the
look,
other.
I'd love to get introduced to Joel and see if we can actually help him,
Yeah,
because obviously there's so much he can do. Then maybe there's some stuff that we can actually assist with.
so and you know what as well. is that I don't think Joel ultimately in life wants to be just Jim's digital guy.
No, he wants to be broader than that.
Joel has his own aspirations, and he's
Yep.
been with him for 10 years though, and he started off as something else, right? So he started off,
Yeah.
I don't know, in a role, and
There's a bit of loyalty
he's
there. Yeah.
grown into this role, right? And apparently Jim is hard work, right? So I've met him a few times and stuff,
Yeah, I've
but
known some people like Clark Rubber that used to
yeah,
work with him. He is hard work. Yeah.
yeah. So, but no, that's easy. That's an easy intro. And yeah, no, he's a really nice fellow. I've had him along to a few things and stuff. So again, and I'm pretty close with. As I said, I don't feel like I'm too far off doing stuff with the gyms group, right?
Hmm.
So, and so again, if you know Joel, and there's an element of Joel's a little bit stuck to what he has to do within the brand, right? But as I said, so good conversation you guys will
Been
have
there,
off.
done that.
You
Joel,
guys will have a conversation together anyway. So
Joel
yeah,
and
but
I'll
I'll make that note.
certainly bond on that because what you want to do and what you have to do in franchising are very different things sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's
exactly.
like that's
Yeah,
not
and
technically correct, and that's not going to help anyone. But I've told all of them I'm going to do it. Okay, we better do it then. So
yeah, and
yeah.
often that sort of reminds me of the fact that we often use that, particularly in business networking. You don't know who people know, but sometimes that's a negative. It's
Yeah.
because, like in just for Joel's case, is well, yeah, he knows Jim,
Mm.
but we don't know if that's a positive
Yeah,
necessarily
you
or
don't
a
know if he
negative
has
for us
yeah, good,
potentially. You
yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, definitely.
And even in his own experience. So yeah, you'll. I mean, often with the thing in the first place is just to get to know people and kind of then find out what the opportunity might look like over time.
Mm.
So we've got the benefit of knowing each other for a long time, but we're jumping back together. We haven't really got together for a long time either. So yeah, it's good.
No.
But that is the advantage of longevity, isn't it? It's funny.
Yes,
It's a
it
bit like
is.
going back to your footy mates and going, "Oh yeah, we did this together." So anyway,
Yeah, I think there's opportunity for video and photography, but I think initially for the website stuff. So if you're getting in there for an initial consult and saying, well, we want to make sure your content on your website's good, and then we'll repurpose that on the different social channels,
mm,
then it's a really good opportunity to kind of go, okay, so we recommend getting some photography or updating some photography, and then you can kind of go to okay, there's a package for so many shots. Okay, do this, do that type of scenario.
just on
Um,
that,
yep.
he's also a really ripping bloke. So in my business network, there's only
Mm,
one person that's kind of close to the marketing sphere, right? So
yeah.
that's not including Steve, because remember I've already said the businesses typically just think of marketing more so as business, right? So Steve is
Yep.
clearly in the sphere, but we actually have got a very, very good photographer,
Oh,
and
good.
this guy is called Aaron. And so I wonder with him whether it mightn't be a good introduction. But I say he's very good, but I think he's the reverse, right? He'll dabble in video if asked, right? And he's
Yes.
a graphic designer by by
Yep.
trade, right? So,
Mm.
and he's very new, and I've only just, realistically, each time we've gone to actually have an in-person meet, we've gone into lockdown, right? But he's just a great guy. Is
Yep.
all I could tell you at the moment. And him and I have gone through some similar experiences. I'd like to introduce him to you because again, I just reckon you guys will have a good conversation.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Good.
and
Good.
and he's been the first person to um, and this is again, which is kind of, it's funny how the world works, right? But the first referral I've had from my new business network was this guy called, and he has a side hustle. He's a really
Mm.
good craftsman, made by Mike. So he's done a lot of craft type stuff, but he also
Yeah.
does you know retail craft recycled stuff for cafes and things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: he's in marketing and economics at M- Melbourne University. He's from
Go
Sydney,
figure.
right, originally.
Yeah.
So so I did all his setup and I've done a planning session with him for his Made by Mike, right?
Mm. For his
But this
brand.
guy
Yep.
is out of business and marketing at the University of Melbourne. So again, if for no other reason to introduce you to Aaron because he's also in because he's a very good photographer,
Yep.
but he's connected and he's out sort of he'd be I don't think. I think he'd almost. You guys would probably be potentially born in the same year. I have a feeling he's also um, nearer to 50 than 40. So
Yep.
anyway, but I'm going to write his name down as well because
Yeah.
I just think he's a good person for you to know, and who knows what. Um, but yeah. Um, anyway, then the other thing is, and just cheap as we've done well
Yep.
with our it's good to have open meetings. Um,
Yep.
but we should, particularly if you've got downtime and different time, I do want to walk you through as if you are a client, right? So just to go
Yeah.
through that sort of process. So
Yep.
as I said, I have created Basecamp. I'll bring you into your project within Basecamp so you understand how we run projects, in
Yep.
terms of on the basis you kind of know how then we work, right? So
Yeah. Working
y-
style. Yep.
yeah, and yeah, and then it would just be a matter of sort of, I think we'd split it up. Let's do a setup day one day, and let's
Mm.
do a planning session another day, and then let's keep talking about. I think there are some early clients that I could just go, oh yeah, well you want to get a little bit of sort of some stuff done because I want you to tell me how you want to present some of your stuff on your socials, right? So I
Yeah.
don't want to do you exactly the same as I do everybody else at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, and look, the interesting thing, I think, I will have a conversation with my business partner over the weekend. But I will work out with him like entry level photography package. But more importantly, I'm going to work on the videography stuff because
Mm,
that's a little bit harder to get and more thought around. There'll be some tight parameters around it, but it'll be like, one showcase video, one testimonial video,
mm.
and the video will be like 90 seconds or 2.5 minutes or something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But it'll be tightly parametered around it.
Yeah.
Um, but at least they know, okay, I spend $2,000, I get two videos,
Yeah, yeah.
or
The
yeah,
business explainer, the why us type video
yeah,
is a
yeah,
champion video to
yeah.
use,
The
right? So
explainer showcase video, like
yeah,
who
yeah.
they are and what they're about,
Yeah, yeah.
and the testimonial one is some social proof ones. So
So
um,
so the other person that I do want and again I said it to you last time, but if you go
mm,
on my social media, you probably I don't know if you've gone on our Facebook page, right? But I've got it
mm,
pinned to the top of the page, and that's a testimonial video from probably my best client, right? Um, and it's a guy called Roy Kowalski. He runs Out There Branding in Sydney, um,
yeah,
and he's kind of loved. Right? He's in the top 20 performed. Him and his business partner in Gold Coast are in the top 20 performed BNI members in Australia, and they're not who you'd expect to be in BNI. He
right,
works with
okay,
Google and YouTube, and basically has all the same people that he wants to speak to as you do.
wow, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what's on the top of your page there? Yep,
Yeah, yeah. So I don't have a business explainer for my business, but I do have that from that is gifted to me, as is this from Roy, because I do
so
his
he
social
gave you this.
because I do his social media. And
Yep,
Roy used to use a mob called Attention Experts,
yep,
who are out of Sydney, and I think have a relationship with Smartline. I think they somehow became the social media people for Smartline, which is a mortgage broker, and then
yep.
figured I will roll that strategy out for everybody else. And Roy was a client of theirs. Roy thinks they're shit. And so I've just met a local guy who I really like, who's from Attention Experts down here, and he's
Yep.
representing them. And I've said the same. I said, "Oh, yeah, my best client used to work with you guys, and he doesn't rate you, and I kind of want to know why, because I think you probably, I kind of think that probably you're probably good at the strategy and marketing, but you probably don't execute how I execute." And so I
Yep.
think there's still an opportunity for us to do some stuff together, but I need to work out why Roy thinks you shit. So, because I'm going to have a hard job convincing him if I go and tell him tomorrow that I might do a little bit of stuff with attention experts, he'd be going, "What the fuck,
Mm.
Steve?"
After our conversation,
Yeah,
Steve.
exactly. But anyway, Roy is also the person that told me, "Oh, you seem to be offering me bronze medal, fourth place, and fifth place. I want to know what
Yeah, but
silver and gold looks like."
you know that though.
Yeah, yeah.
There are people that go, okay, what's the next levels up, and there are people who are going, how
Roy's a
much?
bit of
How much?
a bit like, so Steve is a paid by somebody else mentor, and
Yep.
Roy is probably more that mentor, a bit like we talked about with some of our Monash colleagues, you know. So he's
Yeah.
a bit like a Frank for me. He's a friend, really. That's the reality, you know. He's just
Mm.
somebody you meet along the way, and all of a sudden you click with, and you go, "Oh shit, I
Yeah.
can learn from you." And
Part
and
of the
the
journey.
reality is, I'm sure he's also learning from me, and he's very honest. When you know, it's not me telling me, Roy, doing me a testimony. It's he wanting. He says, "Steve, I'm going to do that for you." You know what I mean? So yeah. So he's another guy that. But mind you, whenever I do refer or introduce anybody to Roy, it's like, Steve, who the fuck is this person? so, so I've made the mistake before of, you know, not explaining myself properly enough to him. So anyway,
Yeah.
I'll do that. Yeah,
Awesome. Well, it's been great catching up, and I
yeah.
really appreciate your insights and your feedback on the bits that I need